A desperate ex-Marine who is a troubled man dealing with personal turmoil and suicidal tendencies teams up with an ex-con who wastes his time drinking at a bar and forms an unlikely partnership to rob a corrupt politician's funds before his re-election. The movie begins with Rory sitting in his therapist's office. He had once been a Marine, but now he appeared frustrated, rubbing his temples as Donna, his therapist, watched him. He told her that he had tried everything, but nothing had changed. Leaning forward, Donna urged him to explain what was wrong. Rory, sighing, admitted that he couldn't. He revealed that he had given himself a year to fix his life, and if things didn't improve, he would take a different path. That year had now ended. Standing up to leave, he reached the door when Donna called out, asking if he was sure he had done everything he could. Without looking back, Roy responded that there was only one option left. Meanwhile, in a dimly lit basement, Besagai was questioning two criminals while Richie stood nearby, silently observing.
You send flares up! No one...
Besagai demanded to know the information he needed. The next day, Kabi, visibly drunk, spotting a kid nearby, he motioned for him to come over and handed him a breathalyzer, instructing him to blow into it. Once the bike started, Kabi smirked and sped off. He arrived at a bar owned by his old friend Kelly. Kabi enjoyed spending most of his time at this local bar after being released from prison. As Kabi sat down, Kelly, looking annoyed, tossed him a phone and mentioned that someone wanted to talk to him. Kabi took the call, but Kelly reminded him about the money he still owed. Later, Kabi met Rory and Richie in a quiet place, where Rory introduced himself as a former Marine. Besagai, the man who had called, laid out the plan. He explains that he recruited the crew to steal Mayor McKelly's election funds before his re-election, which are kept in an untraceable vault at the re-election party on the wharf. He instructs them to steal the money without leaving any trace. Rory, as an ex-Marine who's new to a life of crime, nervously takes notes on the plan. Kabi, leaning in, wanted to know how much money they were talking about. Smirking, Besagai estimated that the amount would be at least $1 million. He stated that the money would be split evenly, with each person receiving 10%, though the actual share would depend on the total amount. If the sum was less, their shares would be lower, and if it was more, they would receive accordingly. Kabi and Besagai agreed to the terms, but Rory made it clear that he didn't need a full cut. He specified that he required exactly $32,480, no more, no less. He insisted that if the money fell short, the others would have to cover the difference, or he would walk away. Besagai agreed and provided the final instructions. After securing the cash, they were to hand it to Richie and then disappear. Rory hesitated, voicing concerns about what would happen if Mark Choi, McKelly's rival, took control. Choi had been exposing McKelly's corrupt deals, which included taking bribes from businessmen and selling city property meant for the public. Besagai dismissed the concern, assuring him that such a scenario wouldn't occur. As Rory and Kabi left, Besagai pulled Scalvo aside and ordered him to eliminate them once the job was complete. Besagai nodded in understanding, then turning to Richie and instructed him to get rid of Scalvo as well once the job was done. Richie acknowledged the order without a word. On the heist day, the robbers sneak into the wharf's kitchen. They expect a smooth entry, but instead, things go wrong as they find more employees than expected in an empty vault. The safe they were aiming for has already been cleaned out by Mayor's crew, making their entire plan seem like a comedy of errors. Scalvo decides to loot the mayor and his associates, which ultimately leads to his death and a violent shootout in which Kabi gets wounded. Rory and Kabi navigated through the building when a cop stepped into their path. Kabi, pulling out a gun, demanded the keys. After hesitating, the man handed them over, allowing Rory and Kabi to jump into the truck and speed away. However, Kabi, still recovering from an injury, lost control of the vehicle and crashed into another car. The sound of sirens filled the air as police gave chase. Kabi and Rory pushed the truck to its limits, hoping to outrun the authorities, and somehow managed to escape the immediate pursuit. As they continued their tense journey inside the truck, Kabi mentioned that there were 2 phones in the back of the truck. Rory immediately realized what that meant. It indicated that an officer was inside. Kabi warned that if Rory opened the door, the officer would shoot instantly. Rory knocked, but there was no response. Moments later, Kabi swung the door open, and a gunshot rang out, narrowly missing them. The officer inside pointed his weapon at them, but Rory and Kabi wasted no time. They grabbed the money bags and ran. They then stole a car and drove off. Besagai realized the job has gone wrong. He then leaves the mess for Richie to fix and hires the hitman Booch to track down the 2 men. After traveling for a long time, the 2 robbers finally reached their hiding place. Meanwhile, a strange detective named Frank arrived at the place where the robbery happened the night before. He started asking questions about the stolen gold bracelet. The mayor was very angry about the theft, so he told Detective Frank to find the two foolish robbers no matter what. At the same time, the robbers called their boss, Richie, and told him what had happened. One of them was hurt badly and needed a doctor. Richie promised to send help while they waited in their car. As soon as the call ends, Richie orders Booch to find and kill them both. Rory and Cobby arrive at a small house, which Cobby says belongs to his friend Kelly. Inside, Rory examines Cobby's wounds, noting the severe bleeding and labored breathing. He mutters that the bullet needs to come out, but admits he doesn't know how to do it. Searching through the stolen bags, they find stacks of cash and valuables. Cobby picks up an old bracelet with strange numbers carved on the back. Elsewhere, Richie receives a message about the bracelet and immediately sends Booch after them. Inside, Cobby, leaning back on the couch, acknowledges that Rory saved his life and questions why, given that they barely know each other. Rory hesitates before revealing that he has been trying to see his son, but couldn't afford school fees, child support, or legal bills. He explains that his time in the military kept him away, and now he owes exactly $480. If he pays it, he can finally see his son. After the divorce, he couldn't look his son in the eyes until he settled his debts. Cobby nods, hoping Rory gets that chance. Before they can continue, a knock at the door startles them. Rory opens it to find Booch and a lady pretending to be a doctor. He lets them in, but as soon as the door closes, the lady pulls out a gun. Cobby, recognizing Booch, remarks that they've met before. Booch smirks but ignores him, checking the stolen goods until he spots the bracelet, noting its immense value. The two sides point guns at each other, but the robbers are 2 steps ahead. They had already triggered a gas leak, so if anyone fired a shot, they would all die. Booch instructs the lady to wait outside while he handles Rory and Cobby. This gave the robbers leverage, allowing them to leave the building unscathed. As soon as they stepped outside, the house exploded. Meanwhile, Rory had contacted Donna, his former therapist, asking her to meet them. She immediately realized he was involved in the robbery. Rory, exhaling, reminded her that he had no other choice. Donna hesitated, unwilling to get involved in a crime, but Rory suggested she tell the police she had been taken hostage. She agreed, claiming she had been forced to come. She then took them to another safe house and began treating Cobby's wounds, though Cobby still found time to flirt with her. Without him knowing, Donna secretly had called the police, believing that even if Rory was arrested, his mental health record would prevent him from serving time in jail. As they were talking, Rory noticed the approaching officers. His expression turned serious. He grabbed Cobby and turned to Donna, urging her to go to the police if she wanted to live. Donna pleaded, but Rory shook his head and told her he didn't trust them, fearing they might kill them. Just then, a police car crashed into them, blocking their way. More officers arrived and surrounded them. Thinking fast, Rory put the car in reverse and sped away. Now, almost every cop in the city was chasing them. Inside the car, Cobby kept flirting with Donna while she begged Rory to surrender. The chase led them to Kelly's bar, where they hid. The police soon surrounded the building. Frank had entered the bar with the help of the man he had captured. He sniffed the air and asked Rory if he could smell something. Rory's eyes widened as he realized Frank had planted bombs. Frank wasn't interested in arresting anyone. He was only after the bracelet. After getting it, he left with Donna, pretending to have rescued her from the robbers. Then, out of nowhere, the bar exploded. But luckily, again, they escaped. They jumped onto a bus and disappeared into the night. As they sat, Rory asked what they should do now. Cobby shrugged, suggesting they leave the city, as that would be the safest choice. Rory disagreed, telling Cobby they had no money and that the police would find them anywhere. He believed the only way forward was to rob a bank. Cobby frowned, questioning if Rory was serious. He pointed out that they had never done something that big, mentioning the guards and alarms at banks and saying it wasn't a small job. Rory didn't argue but looked out the bus window, deep in thought. Meanwhile, Cobby noticed that people on the bus were holding posters with McKelly's face on them. The posters accused him of stealing money through corruption. That's when Cobby remembered the numbers on the bracelet. He looked at Rory and asked if he needed money. Rory nodded, and Cobby suggested they take it from McKelly. They decide to rob the mayor for the second time. They stole firefighter uniforms and went to the mayor's office. Cobby called an explosion, cutting the power. As people ran out, Rory and Cobby sneaked inside. McKelly and Alan were rushing to grab their cash. Water started pouring from the ceiling, making a mess. Rory and Cobby searched for the vault but were spotted by a guard and ran. They accidentally entered Alan's office. Thinking fast, Rory grabbed a hostage and shouted for the person to stay back. Cobby opened the vault, revealing a pile of money. Alan pulled out 2 hard drives and said they proved McKelly had taken bribes for 25 years. He offered the hard drives in exchange for his release. Just then, a sniper aimed at Rory. Cobby pushed him aside and a gunfight broke out. Rory, Cobby, and Alan were injured. Meanwhile, Donna, who had offered to help the police, arrived as the negotiator. Realizing the police wouldn't show mercy, she helped them come up with a solid escape plan. However, it all ended with them falling into the hands of Detective Frank. They handed over the incriminating evidence they had on the former mayor in exchange for their lives, but things didn't go as planned, and they ended up in prison. In the end, the robbers were released from prison. The new mayor, Mark Choi, was celebrated for his strong anti-corruption stance. The two men parted ways. Cobby rode to Donna's house and shared a happy moment with her, while Rory went to a school, finally seeing his son after years. But the ultimate question here is, why were Cobby and Rory released? While Mayor Choi may have appeared to be a good leader, in reality, he was just another politician with questionable integrity. If he had gone after Cobby and Rory, their lawyers would have presented the two hard drives filled with evidence against the former mayor, proving that their goal was never to steal, but to expose Michelli. The evidence would have allowed the court to trace the $100 million, which Choi and his team had learned about from the hard drives. They had a choice: to seize the $100 million and protect the former mayor, or stay true to their cause, return the money to the city, and expose the truth. In the end, Mayor Choi chose to fill his own pockets. As a result, Cobby and Rory were allowed to walk free despite the damage they had caused. They weren't charged, but the money Rory had kept to pay off his debt was taken. Although Rory lost the money, the heist and its aftermath gave him a new perspective on life.